It's easy to be a solitary hero in a video game, or a well-armed adult in a squad of other well-armed adults. My mentality in games like Mass Effect or Fallout is always sacrifice yourself because for the purposes of story progression, you can't die. At least not until the end, and then you get to be a hero. In the same vein of gamifying morality, most games make it pretty clear how to be good and how to be evil. The only tricky bit is having to part with 100 coins to pay someone's rent or what have you to get a positive morality bump. That said, I've played a few games lately that have made morality and decision-making far more complicated, and that's because of one very clever addition: kids. Now, I don't have any kids, never been around any for any length of time, and I'd count myself among those not easily swayed by a cherub-faced tiny human. But it sure is harder to be a ruthless gun-toting war hero with a child next to you watching your every move, getting themselves in trouble, and most importantly, if they're well written, actually making you want to change the way you act around them.
Yep. I'm ready to crash too.
Let's go.
What? No, you're gonna miss our makeover skill.
I'll fall asleep, and then you'll turn my ear off.
Oh, get out of here.
Good night, Finn.
Night,
Sweet
night,
dreams.
kiss.
See you in the
Yeah.
morning.
You didn't have to come with me, you know?
I know.
If you weren't already aware, this is the case in Life is Strange 2, where the series has switched characters for the sequel, and now we're following 17-year-old Sean and his 9-year-old brother Daniel, who is pretty much a human guilt mechanic. The main thrust of the narrative is that you're on the road. And as you'd remember from such adventures as almost every RPG, stealing is pretty much always fair game, so long as you don't get caught. Not so in the case of Life is Strange 2, where Daniel watches and learns from your actions. I spent 3 episodes letting Daniel throw around the odd F-bomb, and now he sounds like a sailor on leave. And this is the monster I've created.
Ready to rumble?
Fucking A.
If you steal in front of him, he'll steal of his own accord, and you'll only find out when you settle at the next location and he's mysteriously collected a new toy. To say this feels terrible would be an understatement, and since the characters of Life is Strange 2 are both really well written, there's a whole new weight to the way you carry yourself in the game world, how you treat other characters, and the typical gamey things you have to give up in order to not feel like the world's worst role model. One of the earliest games that made a lot of gamers feel protective of a young companion is Telltale's The Walking Dead. The protagonist Lee discovers a young girl, Clementine, hiding out in her treehouse, longing for her parents to return home. Lee takes Clementine on as a ward, as neither he nor the player wants to leave her to brave the zombie hordes alone. Given the game revolves around decision-making and the consequences of your actions, there's a lot to consider in how you act around Clementine, and how you impact who she becomes. Then there are games like Until Dawn, where although your characters are way more likely to die, they don't elicit the same level of panic over the responsible or moral thing to do, since every character is similarly self-sufficient. It's easy to make choices as Ethan in Heavy Rain, since his motivation is to save his son Sean. So you simply throw yourself into the firing line, or more accurately, the chopping off your own finger line, ew, to ensure you gather enough clues to save him. The difficulty in these moments is getting the quick time events right, but choosing to push forward through obstacles to ensure Sean's safe return is a no-brainer. Things get messy when taking care of kids isn't the end game, but rather when they're tied up in the same mess as you. This is the crux of A Plague Tale: Innocence, the new plague-rific adventure from Asobo Studio and Focus Home. It follows Amicia de Rune and her little brother Hugo making their way through the rat-filled streets of France during the early years of the Black Death. It's a difficult time filled with rough decisions to make while trying not to get eaten alive or skewered by the soldiers hunting you. Most of the horrifying series of events are unavoidably laid out for you and poor little Hugo, whose voice actor gives a positively heartbreaking performance.
Can I light one?
If you want to. Don't burn yourself.
Thank you. For Mummy and Daddy.
Watch over them.
Embodying Amicia as she kills for the first time and gasps, sickened at her own actions, is affecting in and of itself. But when Hugo sees you take out a soldier, that's when you feel far worse.
You killed him.
This has really driven home further into the game. I found myself trying every which way to avoid killing when Hugo was trailing along behind me, holding my hand. But in the sections Amicia goes off on her own, I was far more comfortable going all Shadow of the Tomb Raider on whoever got in my way. In The Last of Us and God of War, our heroes are paired with Ellie and Atreus respectively. And while the two of them are more useful in combat and can even be trained to improve, they're still very young and you feel a responsibility and a fondness for them. Though A Plague Tale's Hugo is 5 and absolutely precious and must be protected, that sentiment is the same regardless of how capable your young companion is. And that's because of the excellent writing and characterization that's a hallmark of each of these games. It heavily impacts your ability to empathize with Joel, Kratos, and Amicia, and subsequently their journeys and character arcs.
What have you found?
Here, it's St. John's wort.
Oh,
It will protect you when you go to the town.
must be powerful stuff.
Yes, it's a very good flower. It looks good on you.
Thank you.
A Plague Tale is also a stealth game, and having a tiny ward in tow adds an incredible emotional layer to stealth sequences. The threat level and intensity in games like Dishonored or even Amnesia is certainly palpable, but having the responsibility of keeping a child safe, even though it's just the illusion of an extra level of difficulty, makes these situations far more tense. Hugo and Clementine from The Walking Dead aren't actually in any more danger than your protagonist, and don't present any new difficulties to your gameplay experience, but they seem like they do, so the inclusion is quite clever. There's something about the humanity and, yeah, I have to say it, innocence of Hugo in A Plague Tale Innocence, just as there is with Clementine and Daniel. It cuts through your preconceived understanding of how you can get away with behaving as a video game protagonist, as the concept of consequences is reintroduced. Returning to the idea of being the solitary hero, in these games, you don't own and face those consequences singularly. You have to share them with someone dependent who relies on you. Of course, it's still a game and you can still do whatever you want, but The Walking Dead and A Plague Tale don't have the same revel in the gore and violence feeling we're all so used to with the majority of shooters and action games. To reintroduce impact and emotional weight to violence is a difficult thing in video games. A point that couldn't have been made better by the fact that A Plague Tale Innocence arrived less than a month after Mortal Kombat 11. Introducing kids pulls at just about everyone's biological heartstrings, and exploiting that little bit of human psychology creates a refreshing new lens to experience classic video game tropes. As Amicia's older companion tells her in A Plague Tale, it's easy to spill blood, but to love and protect, turns out that adds a whole new dimension.
I'm sorry. I'm sick.
No. Listen, we are going to find a way to cure you.